Thank you for joining us. This is our 5 p.m. update on the situation in Jindo where Sewol-ho ferry capsized. I'm Daniel Chad with the latest. We are now well into the 7th day of search and rescue efforts for the victims of those aboard the tragic ferry. The death toll now stands at 108, but no news of survivors so far. We go live to our Hwang Sung-hee standing by at Paengmok-hang Harbor, which is around 20 kilometers away from the site. Sung-hee, how is the situation down there?
Daniel, dozens of bodies were recovered throughout the day, and with the death toll now standing well over 100, it seems that the atmosphere here at the Paengmok-hang Harbor has become even grimmer. Family members of the missing who have been camping out here since the day of the accident seems to be now losing their last strands of hope. I've seen police just bring back a man who was ready to jump into the water himself, and some have even lashed out at the Coast Guard authorities, questioning the productiveness of the rescue operations. Others have grown restless, many just sitting outside and staring into the water with blank faces. Because of the rapidly rising death toll, a temporary funeral parlor will be set up here at Paengmok-hang Harbor. Officials and representatives of the parents of the Tanwon High School students, along with the Maritime's minister, held a closed-door meeting on the funeral process for the dead about an hour ago. Now, the weather here is very sunny, and more divers are reportedly taking part in today's search operations to take advantage of the neap tide that has started. This was Hwang Sung-hee reporting live from Paengmok-hang Harbor.
Thanks for that, Sung-hee. Now, hundreds of heroic divers are heavily involved in the search and rescue operations even as we speak. The harsh conditions they face have been well documented. Poor visibility, strong currents, and having to bring up the bodies of so many young students. It only makes their work physically and emotionally draining. Our Park Ji-won reports.
A rescue diver from the Korean Navy Ship Salvage Unit goes into the water with hopes of finding survivors or the bodies of the fallen. Under the surface, their visibility is limited. Pitch black really, save for an area about 20 centimeters in front of the divers' faces. The situation worsens at night. Despite the help of flares and lighting from fishing boats, divers can barely see, relying instead on distance lines or guidelines. Those lead them inside the sunken ferry and then back to safety. There are hundreds of Navy and private divers on the scene, but each guideline can only be shared by 2 divers. In the early hours of rescue operations, just 3 or 4 divers were able to get into the water because just 1 or 2 guidelines were set up. High waves and strong currents also hampered the rescue operations in the first 48 hours after the accident, which is so-called golden time for rescue operations. After numerous failed attempts, divers finally got inside the ferry on the 5th day of the tragic accident with the help of 5 guidelines that were set up. With tighter currents and waves coming this week, search operations have accelerated. However, divers are still at risk. They face the risk of decompression sickness, known as diver's disease, which took the life of a Navy diver who was participating in search and rescue efforts following the sinking of the warship Cheonan 4 years ago. Despite such risks, rescue divers continue to go into the water with faint hopes of finding a survivor, even though it's now been days since the ferry sank. Park Ji-won, ARIRANG News.
Well, hope still springs eternal. Rescue teams continue their painstaking search of the sunken Sewol-ho ferry for any signs of survivors. They focus their efforts on the 3rd and 4th floors of the ferry, and they believe most bodies will be found in the ship's cafeteria. We'll get more details from our Kim Hyun-bin, who is standing by at the Central Disaster and Safety Headquarters on Jindo Island. Hyun-bin, fill us in on the latest.
The spokesperson said a little over an hour ago the search team found an additional 12 bodies from the 3rd and 4th floor of the vessel today, in addition to the 23 bodies that were found on Monday. Most of the victims retrieved over the past 2 days were high school students who were in a ferry's lounge when the vessel capsized. He added that a lot of unrecovered bodies are thought to be located in the cafeteria of the vessel, as it was breakfast time when the ferry started listing. That area is going to be the next place divers enter. Today, 239 vessels, 32 aircraft, and over 750 divers are deployed for the search operation.
Well, Hyunbin, I hear outside of Korea, the international community is also doing its best to reach out and help Korea in this time of need. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
You're right, Daniel. The U.S. Defense Department said Monday that it plans to send a salvage ship to South Korea to help recover the ferry when the operation gets to that stage. South Korea has not formally requested for the ship, but is currently being moved from Thailand. The ship is designed to repair or salvage ships crippled in combat anywhere around the world. The rescue team also successfully dispatched 2 remotely operated underwater vehicles from the United States for the first time. And 3 experts from the Netherlands are scheduled to help as well. Korean authorities have also asked China to borrow barges and cranes. This has been Kim Hyun-bin reporting live at Central Disaster and Safety Countermeasures headquarters in Chindo.
Thanks for that, Hyunbin. Now, Korea isn't alone in this monumental task of combing the Sewol-ho ferry for survivors and bodies. With U.S. President Barack Obama scheduled to visit Seoul later this week, Washington has made all of its resources in the region available to Korean authorities and says it will help with the investigation into what caused the ferry to sink if Seoul asks. Our Connie Kim reports.
The U.S. remains at the ready to help Korea in this very difficult time. The Pentagon said Monday that the Navy salvage ship USS Safeguard is now sailing to the waters of Korea in case Seoul asks for help with salvage operations once they begin. The U.S. National Transportation Safety Board has also pledged to help investigators determine what caused the ferry to sink if requested. The U.S. Navy ship USS Paengmok-hang Harbor, which was conducting routine patrols in Korean waters last week, is already on the disaster site along with its helicopters. President Barack Obama, who is scheduled to arrive in Seoul for a 2-day visit later this week, has pledged full support in the ongoing search and rescue operations. The presidential advisor, Ben Rhodes, said this week during a press briefing that the Sewol-ho ferry disaster will take priority during Obama's trip to Seoul. In addition to the Sewol-ho disaster, President Obama and President Park Geun-hye are also expected to discuss North Korea's nuclear program. Rhodes said the door to dialogue remains open for Pyongyang so long as the regime is ready and willing to denuclearize. Connie Kim, ARIRANG News.
What happened aboard the Sewol-ho ferry right before it capsized? Investigators are still trying to figure out what happened exactly, but have unlocked one piece of evidence that may help uncover more. Our Connie Kim, or rather our Kim Ji-yeon, reports.
For 3 minutes and 36 seconds after 8:48 Wednesday morning, the tracking record for the Sewol-ho ferry was apparently not connected and not providing information. But the Ministry of Maritime Affairs and Fisheries has restored the record using data from the Mokpo Automatic Identification System base station. It shows nothing in the first 36 seconds, and a ministry official said that the Sewol-ho ferry could have experienced a blackout during this time. They believe the AIS device might have been disconnected for that period of time, but restored later using emergency batteries. After that missing 36-second period passes, the tracking record shows that the Sewol-ho ferry has slowly started turning starboard and then abruptly turned 45 degrees. The official says the events probably unfolded after the ship veered suddenly. At the time of the accident, the ferry was traveling at a normal speed of 17 knots and was about to turn the stern 10 degrees heading into a treacherous waterway. The Maritime Ministry added that they need to investigate further to see if the capsize was caused due to the reduced dynamic stability of the vessel. If there was an electrical blackout, it could indicate a defect on the ferry and another possible cause of the accident. Kim Ji-yeon, ARIRANG News.
When the Sewol-ho ferry first ran into trouble, most of its passengers followed the instructions given to them by the ship's crew and stayed put inside the ship. This piece of information has confounded foreign maritime experts who say that decision and the indecisiveness on the part of the captain and crew likely doomed hundreds on board. For more, here's our Yudian.
Maritime experts describe the announcements on the Sewol-ho ferry instructing people to stay in their rooms at the time of the accident as totally incomprehensible.
In 99.9% cases, the crew is on top of it. They are well trained and they are able to evacuate the ship in plenty of time.
The retired Commodore says it is unacceptable that the captain completely failed in his duties to take control during the crucial moments after the accident.
Key decisions should be made within the captain's mind within 5 to 10 minutes. As soon as he gets a report from all departments of the ship and assesses how much damage is done to the vessel itself.
Logs show that the captain of the Sewol-ho ferry, Lee Jun-seok, delayed evacuation for at least 30 minutes after the ship began to capsize. Others say the announcement telling people to stay where they were actually made the situation worse. Mario Vitone, a former U.S. Coast Guard maritime accident investigator, says if those announcements were not made, the passengers would have gone to the deck to see what was going on. Thad Allen, the former head of the U.S. Coast Guard, also says common sense dictates that when a situation is deteriorating, the crew needs to give up on trying to save the ship and pour efforts into saving the passengers. Yudian, ARIRANG News.
The cause of this tragic sinking is currently under investigation. The possibility of the ferry hitting a submerged rock or a drastic change in direction of over 90 degrees has already been ruled out. The focus now shifts to the structure and the loading of the vessel. For more on the marine operator and status of the investigation, we connect with our Song Ji-sun at the news center. So, Ji-sun, the latest evidence tells us what now?
Well, Daniel, it tells us that investigators are taking a long, hard look at the operator of the Sewol-ho ferry. It turns out that the revenue from shipping cargo was a cash cow for the company, which was suffering from operating losses in the slumping shipping industry. According to an audit report of Cheongjin Marine Company, its cargo profits continue to rise, eventually exceeding passenger shipping revenue. That amounted to some $19 million in 2013, up more than 70% from 4 years earlier. On the other hand, revenue from transporting passengers had been dropping. The reason? Transportation experts say it has to do with the recent rise in low airfare operators that now fly from most major cities on the peninsula to Jeju Island. Cheongjin have been operating 4 lines, 2 of which have been traveling between Incheon and Jeju Island. All of the company's operations, however, have been suspended since the Sewol-ho ferry disaster last week. And prosecutors have imposed travel bans on 30 additional officials related to Cheongjin Marine Company, and the Oceans Ministry is looking into revoking the ferry operator's shipping business license.
Tragically, it boils down to money and greed. Aside from commercial cargo, water was also a critical factor in the sinking, apparently. Could you tell us more about that?
For that, let's take a look at the layout of the Sewol-ho ferry on the screen. If you look at the structure of the ship, the lowest level houses the engine and the ballast tank, where water for balancing the vessel must be loaded before departure. The company has expanded its cabin capacity to allow more passengers and the cargo as well, and authorities approved the renovation under one condition, that the company increase the amount of water in the tank to secure its balance. Whether that operator abided by that rule is now under question, since more water on board means more fuel is needed for the 6,800-ton vessel. And fuel, of course, costs money, and it's not a stretch to think the cash-strapped company may have cut corners to maximize its profits. Something that supports this theory is that the ship sank upside down, suggesting there was more air in the bottom level of the vessel than water in the ballast tank.
Selective renovation, it seems. Well, it looks like it's going to be difficult to prove now that the Sewol-ho ferry has gone down more than 20 meters below sea level. Moving to other stories, search and rescue operations do continue, right? What's the latest with that, Ji-sun?
Let's take a different look inside the cabin now, where rescue teams are now focusing most of their efforts. The 3rd and 4th floors are where the most passengers were expected to be present at the moment of the accident, between 8 and 9 a.m. last Wednesday morning, as it was breakfast time. divers have also searched the 4th floor of the ferry where the cabins for most of the Tanwon High School students were located. At this point, the vessel lies at an almost 90-degree angle from this floor plan after sinking upside down to touch the ground underwater. Meanwhile, a Navy UDT member who participated in the rescue operation early this morning is being treated for symptoms of diver's disease, which include temporary paralysis and an extreme headache. He's recovering in a decompression chamber at this moment. Back to you, Daniel.
Thank you for that, Chi-sun. Good luck to the recovery on that particular heroic diver. The Sewol-ho ferry disaster has raised serious questions now about safety awareness here in Korea. Authorities have vowed to punish those responsible for the accident to the full extent of the law. Unfortunately, records show that in Korea, those who violate maritime regulations have often got away with it. Our Connie Lee has more.
Coast Guard officials flip over a boat after knocking on it in search of survivors. 7 crew members were found dead in this hit-and-run accident. This happened last year in March in the same waters where the Sewol-ho ferry incident took place. And just about 2 weeks ago, authorities caught 6 crew members under the influence of alcohol, steering a boat in the waters around Korea. But even out of the sea waters, more trouble. Last month, authorities found 17 sailors steering ships with illegal licenses. In the past 5 years alone, here in Korea, about 600 people were found dead or missing from maritime accidents, most of them caused by human error. From 2009 to 2013, there were about 1,400 accidents at sea. And out of those, 82% were caused by the crew. Safety violations and negligence were the cause for most of the accidents. Regardless, in those cases, the penalties for the crew would be considered light by most. Most of them were let off with just a warning, while others were suspended from work. Not a single one of the crew members had their licenses revoked. Year after year, light punishments for the many accidents in Korean waters. And now, with Korea's biggest maritime accident in decades at the fore, questions are being raised about whether it's finally time to take sea safety more seriously. Connie Lee, ARIRANG News.
The bodies that have been recovered from the Sewol-ho ferry are transferred either to hospitals or funeral halls. More are being released to the families today, and our Shin Se-min is out at one of the hospitals in Ansan that is receiving bodies. Se-min, what's the latest from where you are?
Yes, Danielle, a total of 11 victims have been released here in the city of Ansan. Here at the Korea University Ansan Hospital, 5 of the deceased students also have been released. And shortly thereafter, 5 more bodies have arrived here, bringing the total number now here at 6. As more have arrived, buses after buses of mourners are visiting this funeral hall to pay their respects. 21 more bodies are expected to be released at 8 different funeral halls in Ansan on Wednesday. In a briefing held by the hospital a couple of hours ago, officials here say they are reviewing the possibility of releasing inpatients depending on their conditions. Now, this comes as the hospital has been saying that most of their patients' physical and mental conditions have improved since they were brought to the hospital the first day. Earlier today, parents of the students made an appeal at the Ansan Office of Education, urging for swift rescue operations and also for criticizing the media for its indiscriminate reports on this tragic accident. They also asked for all of society to help them through this very difficult moment. And yesterday, representatives of the families also asked the authorities to wrap up the ongoing search and rescue operations by this Thursday, and the authorities said they would do their best to meet the deadline.
The teens who haven't been rescued yet, the ones that went to heaven, as well as the ones that survived, all need our care. The kids that survived feel guilty. At the hospitals, they're helping the students to comfort their minds and bodies.
Se-min, we also hear that memorial altars are being set up in the city of Ansan so people can pay their last respects to those who have passed. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
That's right. A temporary altar is expected to be ready by tomorrow morning, Wednesday, at around 9 o'clock. A group altar is still in the process of being set up at the Ansan Olympic Memorial Hall, which is just about 10 minutes away from this hospital. Friends and relatives will be able to pay their tribute to those who have passed. And not only here in Ansan, but also in the city of Incheon, from where the Sewol-ho ferry left the shore, another group memorial altar will be set up at the International St. Mary's Hospital, which is where 7 other recovered bodies are being held. And that's all for now. And this has been Shin Se-min reporting live from Korea University Ansan Hospital.
Thank you for that, Semin. Moving on, Korean celebrities are also doing their part to help with the Sewol-ho ferry disaster. LA Dodgers pitcher Ryu Hyun-jin is one of them. He held a special autograph session, and proceeds all go to the survivors and families of the deceased. Others have delivered relief goods to the accident site as well. Our Kim Min-ji has the details.
A long line of baseball fans gather in front of Dodger Stadium in Los Angeles, where pitcher Ryu Hyun-jin is signing autographs to raise funds to support the victims of the Sewol-ho ferry disaster. Korean-American fans who took part in the event said they wanted to help out in any way they could.
It's sad and very depressing. It must be a hard time, but I hope the families do not lose hope.
It was a sentiment shared by all who were there.
Just devastation towards the families, especially when you're talking about such young victims, high schoolers that were on that boat. It's very tragic.
Ryu said that he was keeping up with the news out of Korea, adding that his thoughts were with the victims and their families. He also put up a sign on his locker that read Sewol 41614 in tribute. Ryu has already donated $100,000 through his HJ99 Foundation, earmarked for the Sewol-ho ferry disaster.
I'm hoping for good news. Please take care.
Other Korean celebrities have also been making donations. Figure skating star Kim Yeon-ah gave some $100,000 through UNICEF and tweeted that she prays for a miracle. A list of actors have also made contributions, big and small, while some have delivered relief goods to the harbor and auditorium where families have been staying. And all this to express one message, that the families and friends of this horrible disaster are not alone in this very difficult time. Kim Min-ji, ARIRANG News.
A sliver of positive development so far is that the weather conditions have improved in Chindo. So now let's check with our Michelle Bach for the latest updates. Michelle, what type of conditions are rescuers dealing with right now?
Well, the favorable weather and the tidal conditions are helping with the search. Now, today's been a mild day with less wind compared to yesterday, with a highs of up to 19 degrees. Now, starting today, the area is having neap tides, which is when the sea current is at the lowest level. Now, those conditions will last until Thursday, and until then, the search operations are likely to continue for 24 hours a day. Now, also along with the neap tides, one of the periods of the slow tides recently have passed, and one more period is left to go at 10:57 p.m. local time. Now, with these periods, the tides will drop to below half a meter for an hour. Now, current temperature of the water in Chindo is at 11.8 degrees Celsius, with the winds blowing at 5.3 meters per second, and the height of the waves is at 0.5 meters, which are favorable conditions for the divers to search the vessel. Now, that's all I have at this moment. Back to you, Daniel.
Thank you for that, Michelle. For now, these stories are the latest we have for you surrounding the Sewol-ho incident. We'll be back with more updates at 6 p.m. Korea time, so tune in then. Thank you for watching.